Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand. I'm Gwen Robinson, Vice President of the FCCT and Editor-at-Large of Nikkei Asia. As you all know, we're here tonight to hear about illicit economies in the Mekong region, updates and projections, and we have an excellent lineup here on our panel. But before we turn to that, I just would like to briefly update you on a few upcoming things that are not yet on our program but are about to be announced. And I know this is particularly because we've got a room full of people that are vitally interested, I think also in Myanmar as well as the broader Mekong region. So on January 26th, we have a very interesting evening of short documentaries on Myanmar, which are the 5 top award winners for the DVB short film contest, and we'll have filmmakers and critics plus some Myanmar speakers on that night, January 26. And then on January 31, we'll have a very, I hope, a very relevant panel on to mark the 3rd anniversary of the February 1, 2021 coup in Myanmar with key representatives of Myanmar's resistance, as well as a few journalists from the newly formed Independent Press Council of Myanmar, plus a couple of our correspondents, and we hope to have a very stimulating discussion that night. The leaders, resistance leaders from all the key bodies of the resistance will appear on Zoom, and they will have the Myanmar journalists in the clubhouse. I think it will be a very interesting program, so keep that in mind. The details will come out shortly on our website and Facebook. And on Monday, January the 23rd, we've got a lunchtime speaker, Jeffrey Wasserstrom, professor from University of California, who is the author of several very interesting books looking at the protest movement in Hong Kong and its impact and interaction with protest movements in this region, particularly Thailand, as well as Myanmar, Taiwan, the Milk Tea Alliance. So that is a lunchtime talk, and that is now on our website. So please keep those events in mind. And I'd like to turn now to our panel tonight and introduce our speakers. I think you know what the issues are that we're talking about. There's been huge publicity recently about scam centres along the borders, particularly along Thailand's borders, Cambodia, Thai, Laos, and particularly inside Myanmar, bordering China, as well as Thailand and Laos. And also the fallout from that has generated a lot of news about the conflict inside Myanmar, Operation 1027, which was the joint attack by resistance groups, ethnic ones in northeast Myanmar, as well as numerous issues, including China's extremely, let's say, fluid position on a lot of these things. So hopefully we're going to hear some answers tonight. And just to introduce our panel, I'll start with next to me, to my immediate right, is Tozor Lat, consultant with Mizima News and the newly elected secretary of the recently formed Independent Press Council of Myanmar. Next to Tozor Lat is Jeremy Douglas, regional representative of UNODC Regional Office for Southeast Asia and the Pacific. And next to Jeremy is Kun Suprani Saticharan, Director of Cooperation and Standard Development Division of the AMLO, the Anti-Money Laundering Office of Thailand. And last but very not least is John Wojcik, Associate Program Officer, Transnational Organised Crime Analysis at UNODC's Regional Office for Southeast Asia and the Pacific. So we thought each of these people are so expert in their field, and they all have a few slides. I think we'll kick off with Jeremy to lead the way. And a reminder that we will open for questions afterwards, so save those. And Jeremy, over to you.
Thanks, Gwen. Good evening, everybody, and I'd like to say I'm really pleased to be on the panel with To and Suprani and John. But thanks for making time to be here this evening, and thank you, Gwen, for bringing this together. So, I'm going to paint a bit of a big picture for everybody, which I think sets the stage for what some of the others will mention. In essence, kind of pulling together some elements of the illicit economies of Myanmar and the Mekong. Particularly zooming in on two types. I mean, we're all familiar, some of you have actually been here when we've announced some drug data, but we've also been doing a lot of kind of analytical research and work and intelligence gathering around casinos over the past 8 or 9 years. First starting in the Golden Triangle, the big casino, which many of you are familiar with there. But the first time we went into it was 2015. To try to draw attention to it, because knowing some of the activities that were understood to be happening there, we were pretty concerned. But then that has mushroomed out. So what I'll do is kind of walk you through a little bit of just maps, actually, to frame, I think, what comes next. John, if you could. When we think about the drugs economy of the region, really over the past decade, there's been this massive uptick in methamphetamine supply. And that actually, interestingly enough, connects very intimately with the casinos and scams, which are something which we're talking a lot about now and drawing a lot of interest. I think that's drawing interest to transnational crime in a different way, which is really important because it's changing the discussion, because the drugs issue has been going for decades and it's rather frustrating for many. But the point is that the geographic point of the Golden Triangle and then the Mekong is really the epicenter of the Asia-Pacific drug trade. Now, that's been the case for decades, as you know, with heroin and opium, and I'll get into a little bit of data in a moment on that. But really, if you are in Sydney, Australia, or Tokyo, or Seoul, or any of the major urban metropolises of this region, the drugs that are being consumed in those places, or here in Bangkok, come from the Golden Triangle. And the same is true if you're looking at a heroin map. The same is true if you're looking at ketamine. I don't know if others have heard of this lately, but it's starting to make a lot of headlines. Ketamine's a new synthetic drug, which is really, well, it's not new actually, but it's new in terms of its use within the region in a wider sense. And it's really being produced in exactly the same areas. And there's reasons for that. These areas are incredibly attractive for organized crime to do business in. They have the conditions necessary on the ground that draw them there to seek a place of essentially a business-friendly environment. Next, please. And this is where the opium is coming from. So if you go back on the previous slide, you recall that the arrows, that kind of spaghetti pattern, which was spilling out of the Golden Triangle, it flows back to this point, which is Shan State in Myanmar. That's the kind of heart of the Golden Triangle. So what we've witnessed over in the opium business in the past year, so methamphetamine has been spilling out over the past decade. Some of you are familiar with the big syndicates, which have been disrupted to some extent. For example, the Sangor syndicate. Some here debated even existed. Literally, it existed. Point is, they were producing there. But so are the big heroin producers producing there. They still are. And recently, with the ban of opium in Afghanistan, which seems to be holding, we see a price spike, which is driving the price up at a global level, which is yet more incentive for the poor of the country to go into opium production. Those areas are pockets of poverty as well. Fundamentally, opium at the end of the day is a poverty issue. Trafficking is an organized crime issue. But the amounts of money that are generated from the heroin trade associated with that area is growing. Okay, so it's well over 10 billion a year. The methamphetamine is well over 70 billion a year. Next, please. And this is a kind of a very complex map, which we updated last week. We contacted our team in Shan. We have a team we have an office in Tonji. We also have one in Michkina and Kachin. But our team up there does our opium survey work, and they basically fan out across Shan. And this is the opium harvest, or the opium, basically the flowers. It's blooming at the moment. So our team is up there. So when they go into those fields, they inform everybody. We're an open book policy. We have to inform both sides, all sides, because it's so complex in that environment, the security environment. In fact, this year we're having difficulty in North Shan for reasons that all of us are familiar with that we will talk about tonight. But this map is current as of last week. Okay, so basically you can see little acronyms there for the different groups. These are all the different groups that are active with control of geographic territory. There's been big changes since the coup. We've seen the SSPP push down through the core, through the center of Shan. The SSPP, in many respects, act as a proxy for some of the other bigger groups, the WA, which arm and fund them to some extent. They also help to move shipments of various commodities from the north to the south. They protect them in different ways. There's funding that can be generated from that. But also we see, most recently, this 1027. So the pink area up at the top, not far from where it says Kachin or China, that's SR1, Special Region 1. That's where we've seen the big change of late, which is the push out of the BGF and their aligned forces of the military, and the assertion of the MNDAA in that territory from which they were pushed out, going back into the earlier 2000s to the 9 when they were pushed out. They were housing, the leadership was living in SR4 in the meantime, with which they have familial relations, some of you might be familiar with. And you know, there's a lot of, I think this is a very good audience to talk about the fact we have to be careful lionizing certain groups. You know, the money's made by all the list of the acronyms there. There's monies from different illicit economies, drugs, scams, casinos, which make many of those groups wealthy. Not simply the group that was pushed out or the BGF's pushed out, but others as well. There's a lot of money flow through those groups. And that comes in a variety of ways. That comes through production, that comes through trafficking, that comes through taxation and taxing the trades which are moving through, whether it's chemicals going in and drugs coming out. So the fact is, it's extremely complex to try to understand that. That's where John and my colleagues Inchik and others come in to try to make sense of that complexity. But the point is that there's a lot of different value being generated for a lot of different groups within that geographic territory, which is, as I said earlier, the heart of the Golden Triangle. Next, please, John. And this is the other area that we're looking at in my last slide, which is the casinos of the Mekong. So there are hundreds of them. Now, this really took off in 2013, around that point in time. There was started a little bit earlier, but really exploded after 2013. And we saw this push out of casino businesses into this space. And a lot of those casinos are clustered in what are called special economic zones, which are special, and therefore seemingly that word in this region has a slightly different meaning than other parts of the world. It means exempt from law in some respects in some places. So there's different effective enforcement of the rule of law in different places. But the point is that they've clustered in those locations, often in border areas. SEZs were intentionally based in border areas for the attraction of cross-border trade, but special regions, the ones I mentioned before, 1, 2, 4, these are the big ones in the north. As well, you'll notice Tachilek and you'll notice Myawaddy. So you'll see a lot of clustering of casinos in those locations. Now the scams really built off the back of that architecture, that infrastructure that was put in place, because the casino technologies, okay, so pre-COVID, there was limited use of online tech gaming. It was there, but it was limited. It really exploded with COVID as the hard border closures hit this region. But you saw in those areas the scams go in. It's another business line in a sense. And what we have noticed, and we've been mentioning today, is the effective use of the casino scam infrastructure as a banking system. So I think one message I would leave with you that we can debate later is the extent to which that infrastructure has supercharged the overall illicit economy of this region, including the drugs economy. It has effectively done that. And it's done that because it's effectively allowed for money movement in much bigger, much more creative ways, much more untraceable ways than in the past. And it's incredibly difficult for governments, that's why I'm really pleased she's here, to deal with this, because they have to deal with all the transactions and trying to understand that and address that. And that is playing catch up in a way that governments haven't had to do in the past, because the innovation in that space is huge. So I would just leave that with you. It's supercharged the illicit economies of the region. So with that, I'll close. Gwen, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Lots of points you raised there that will give us some more food for discussion later on. And now I'd like to turn to Kun Suprani, who's going to give us the Thai perspective on things.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jeremy, for providing us like an overview of the macro region. It's saving my time to talking about that issues. And first of all, I would like to thank the FCCT and the UNODC for having me today and to share about the recent trend about money laundering and the challenges associated with the money laundering in an organized crime in macro regions. So next, please. So in terms of like money laundering scheme, even like Thailand has made many progresses in amending our laws in terms of money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism. However, due to geographical location, as Jeremy already mentions, Thailand has long porous natural borders, like which is facilitate the movement of people, goods, cross-border trade, and also like the funds that into and out of Thailand. But it's also created opportunity for the criminals to use this as an opportunity to launder their proceeds, such as like for drug trafficking, human trafficking, and immigrant labor. In Thailand, we have 28 predicate offenses, such as corruption, drug trafficking, and public fraud. So this predicate offense include the criminal offense that's also committed in outside Thailand. So according to our national risk assessment, which AMLO conducted in 2022, the result shows that the 5 highest risk predicate offense, including corruption, narcotics, branding, environmental crimes, and the public fraud. And these 5 crimes generate around 2% of the Thailand GDP. And the channels that may be vulnerable for money laundering is bank sector and specialized financial institutions, unregulated digital asset provider, the fund company, and the cross-border cash courier. And last but not least is trade-based money laundering, which is increasing emerging channel for using to launder the proceeds in the regions. So next please. Focusing on transnational crime in Mekong region. So we share lots of border and we have like lots of movement in terms of population, goods, and the funding among ourselves, which make it easier for the organized crime network to form and organize within the regions. Drug trafficking, of course, is one of the major crimes in this Mekong area, particularly in the Golden Triangle. So also the immigrant smuggling from Mekong neighboring country to Thailand is another concern. There was also smuggling of illicit goods, wildlife, and the wildlife part along the border. And the stolen car and motorcycle are usually smuggled into Myanmar and Cambodia because they can be registered without having the country of origin. So, and some countries also use as an operation base for online website and online scamming, including online illegal grabbing. So for other regions, next please. For other regions, if you see like from these slides, most of the transnational crimes also still focus on drugs, scam, human trafficking, and transnational crimes. Next please. Economic growth in Southeast Asia, increasing the demand of drugs from other regions resulted in expanding of drug trafficking, which is the turning point. I would see that is an agreement between Myanmar government and the ethnic minority around the Golden Triangles, which allow the drug tycoon, maybe you can correct me after that, which allow me the drug tycoon to operate more freely in this area. So the regional initiative also facilitate the transportation of all the materials and the technological support, such as the One Belt, One Road. And so this is some kind like a factor that could significantly increase the Golden Triangle drugs producing capability as well as the growing drug market in the region. So the emerging crime related to money laundering that we observe recently are cyber crimes or cyber-enabled fraud or illegal grabbing, as well as the environmental crime. For example, the cyber crime. Talking about the cyber crime or the cyber-enabled crime, this is very most of concern. And if you see the recent study of the FADEC, the Financial Action Task Force, which published in November last year. It showed that the cyber-enabled fraud is a growing transnational organized crime using money mule or the shell company or the financial institutions, for example, bank, the payment or remittance provider, as well as the virtual asset provider, or other legitimate businesses to conceal their ill-gotten gain. So criminals use various money laundering techniques, such as using cash, using trade-based money laundering, and also the unlicensed service to launder their proceeds. It is undeniable that the criminal exploit technological development to make it easier and faster to launder proceeds of crime. Virtual service such as online account opening also allow criminals to easily set up foreign account abroad. It is observed that there's increasing of the foreign currency deposit account in Thailand. You can easily deposit the money in Thai baht, and then it's automatically convert to the foreign currency and deposit into other countries. This is an increasing trend of the money laundering method here. Criminals also take advantage of the social media and the messaging platform, the new digital financial institution and products, as well as non-traditional sector, for example, e-commerce and streaming platform to facilitate their illegal activities. They also use the e-commerce and the parcel delivery courier to distribute the illegal goods, including drugs. And nowadays, digital media is used more and more as an advertising and distribution channel for these illicit products. Cryptocurrency, of course, is increasing use for launder proceeds. If you have heard about like the big case, Alphabet case in 2017, the Thai authority, together with the U.S. Authority, will be able to arrest a criminal who operate an online international black market website, which is called Alphabet, and we be able to seize a lot of money and a lot of cryptocurrency at that time. As for the illegal gambling, we also why casino gambling is legal in our neighboring country. As Jeremy already chose the map, there's like a lot of casinos surrounding Thailand, but in Thailand it's still illegal. So, but we observe that lots of junket tour and junket businesses that cause our concern, that they take lots of Thai people traveling to our neighboring country and to like gambling there, and then some traveling agency is being used as the fraud company. So it is difficult for us to trace and get the player information, whether they legitimate earn from the casino or whether they launder the proceeds of crime. And even I think nowadays the House of Representatives is studying the possibility for us to open an open an entertainment complex and to legalize the casino in Thailand, but it's under the studying process. National resource or environmental crime is another concern and a big problem here in Thailand. And there are like people from both inside and outside of the country who are willing to pay for exclusive price for the products that believe that help their health concern. For example, like pangolin, right? Pangolin.
Pangolin.
Yeah, pangolin skins.
Scales.
Yeah, right. That may like boost their health concerns, things like that. So talking about we been observed of the threat that we are facing. Thailand, we didn't just stay still, but we issue like some measures to mitigate the risk particularly for the cyber-enabled crime, we issued the emergency decree on the suppression of the cybercrime in 2023. So, if you may aware of before the emergency decrees are enforced, the law enforcement was able to recover the fraudulent money to the victims, account only 4% of the total loss of the victims. But after this emergency decree enforced, we be able to recover more than 24% of the total loss of the victims. So that means like it's 6 times increasing. And this royal decree also allow the financial institution and the business operator to suspend transaction that's suspicious for fraud related issues. And it's also provide the official with 22 hours, allow them some time to investigations after they receive the complaint from the victims. It's also imposed the imprisonment penalty and the fine for those who open the mule account or allows other people to use the mobile SIM card, because when you conducting the online banking transaction, you need to verify yourself through the mobile number. So those who allow other people to use your SIM card in order to get this fraudulent money, you also be imposed the imprisonment penalty and the fine penalty. And recently, after tomorrow, 16 January 2004, any person who have more than 5 mobile SIM cards must register their identity at the customer service or at the mobile application within 180 days for those who hold between 6 to 100 SIM cards. And for those who hold more than 101 SIM cards, you need to register to the operator within 30 days. Otherwise, the SIM card will be terminated. So AMLO also developed what we call AMLO Person Screening System, or APS in short, to assist the reporting entity to go through all the sanction screening and the transaction monitoring by providing the watch list of the highest risk persons and entities in relation to money laundering, trade financing, and as well as proliferation financing. This is to help the financial institution and the NFBP, which are reporting entity under the anti-money laundering law, to comply with our regulations. Another measure that I would like to address is what we call the anti-online scam operator center. Operation center. Anti-scam operation center, or in short, it's AOC. It's just been recently established in November last year, to promote the preventing and combating online crime and provide the one-stop service to the public. So anyone who get scam before, you can call 1441, just this number. And this include this center, including the representative from the relevant agency, not only the government agency, but also the public sector, private sector. So the Ministry of Digital Economy set up a war room, which comprises of the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society, the Royal Thai Police, DSI, Office of Attorney General of and the Bank of Thailand, AMLO, Banker Association, and the NBTC on National Broadcasting Communication, and including the telecommunication company, who work together and coordinate closely in order to swiftly respond to the complaint by the victim. So it is expected that if you call 1441, if you get scam and then you transfer to the suspicious account, hopefully within 1 hour we be able to like sustain the money transfer and be able to recover the money to the victims. Next slide, please. Next, please. And this is like some of the example that we successfully cooperate with our domestic agency to, to recover the money for the scam case. The first one is like what we call like shell game operation. It is a collaboration between Thai government, AMLO, the cybercrime police, and also engage with the FBI and the Secret Service from the US. So we be able to identify the scam gang, which is led by the Indian nationality, and they have like the Thai wife and a lot of new account, including at this scheme. So we be able to arrest more than 30 people and be able to recover like some money and freeze an asset of this gang. The second one is the recent case that if you may see the press release from AMLO a couple days ago. So we are in collaboration with the Royal Thai Police and the Digital Economy Ministry. So we be able to investigate and expand the network from phone scams, and we be able to link it to the illegal online gambling. And the result of this case, we are able to freeze more than 1 billion baht of this network of the illegal gambling. Next, please. So talking about the channel and the method that recently used nowadays, cash is still the most popular way. So all the criminals likely to keep cash on hand. But cash smuggling and hawala, we still observe it. And even like during the COVID-19, that we have like some travel restriction, cash smuggling is still observed in this area in Mekong regions. Nominee share companies, mail account is also the most popular that they use to launder the proceeds of crime nowadays. Cryptocurrency, foreign currency deposit. This is an increasing trend that you deposit the money in Thai baht and then you be able to open the account in other countries and they convert your money into the foreign currency. You be able to easily cash out the foreign currency overseas. And trade-based money laundering is increasing, okay. And free trade zone, this is a growing concern. They take the benefits of tax and administrative like incentive to provide for foreign investor, but it's also being used like by the criminal to launder proceeds to the free trade zones. And last but not least, the misuse of the citizenship and residency by investment program. We saw many criminals who's married Thai women or even like Thai husband in order to get the citizenship and then be able to buy the property here, and this is one of the big concern. Next, please. So key takeaway that I would like to share with you, like when we work together with other agency. So cross cooperations between FIU and the law enforcement agency is a need in order to, like bring the successful investigation. Public-private partnership is also a need. And last but not least, we need to enhance cooperation both domestically and internationally. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Kun Prani. That was a lot of information, including hotline numbers in case we get scammed. Before we move on to John, can I just quickly ask you though, I guess the big shocking thing for those of us in Thailand recently was seeing all the Thais that were trapped inside northeast Myanmar and then rescued. I think that's unprecedented, isn't it? I just wonder what the view is on that particular aspect that, Thais are actually voluntarily, I presume, going in and, working with a lot of these businesses run by criminal gangs. I mean, is that AMLO responsibility, or do you have a comment on that? And could you speak into the microphone?
Okay, sorry. Oh, well, it's not only our responsibility. Actually, we work closely with other relevant agencies when it comes to any issue related to their authority.
Right.
But we've been observed recently, the increasing trend of using the business as a front to launch the proceeds between Thailand and the neighboring country, not only Myanmar, but other countries as well. This is still ongoing cases, and we've been discussing with the agency involving, for example, Department of Business Administrations, I'm sorry, Department of Business Development, and also the Royal Thai Police to cope with this issue.
Right, okay, thanks. Over to you, John. I think you've got a couple of specific cases you want to show us as well. So.
Yep, thanks very much, Gwen, and thanks everyone for being here today. It's a pleasure to it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'll spend most of my time just driving home a few key points as to the who and the what and the why behind the proliferation of the casinos, the cyber fraud, and some of the other kind of online mechanisms. And on top of that, I'd also like to mention, I don't know if Jeremy mentioned earlier, but we actually also launched a technical policy brief earlier this afternoon on casinos, underground banking, money laundering, and transnational organized crime in the region. So for anybody who's looking for more of a deep dive into those mechanics and some of those trends and developments in the region, I would really encourage you to have a look at that, which is now online. So in any case, through this extensive analysis of the sort of underground banking and money laundering infrastructure that Jeremy and Khun Suprani both spoke to, we've carried out this latest analysis and report, and it's been made pretty clear that that cases in the region show how this development has been exploited and misused by organized crime across the region. Fundamentally, the entire underground industry really revolves around the informal transfer of value. And so these recent cases really demonstrate how casinos and particularly online casinos, largely unregulated, operating in somewhat of a gray area, have been taken advantage of and have proven really effective and efficient in carrying out these underground value transfers. At the same time, the online casino industry in the region has also been providing somewhat of a legal, regulatory, and fiscal cover for some of these operations, helping to justify very high volumes of cash. So in our study, we also describe several money laundering typologies. I'll just go back to this slide. Some of the newer ones, again, include and revolve around online casinos. So we've mapped this out pretty extensively in our research. In the case of casinos and online casinos, one of the traditional routes for money laundering relate to what's known as the cash in and cash out method, effectively converting proceeds of crime into casino chips, playing systematically for an hour or two or longer, and then cashing back out and effectively having some receipt, some proof of your earnings. At the same time, we've also noticed another pretty common methodology in which players will lose intentionally to, say, a trafficker who they need to disburse a payment to. So all of this has basically been supercharged, like Jeremy mentioned, by the different developments in the online space, specifically, again, online casinos, and increasingly also cryptocurrency. Another sort of key area that we highlight in the report relates to junkets and the way that junkets move money. For those of you who don't know, junkets are basically VIP programs for high net worth gamblers. And in many cases, again, touched on in the report, we've observed the junket industry or some actors within that industry effectively using the casino sector as a conduit for moving large volumes of cash, making payments, and fueling, a broad range of different criminality. So one case that I'd like to jump into relates to Special Region 1 of Myanmar, and specifically Kokang. We've talked on the panel about some of the developments recently in North Shan, and we've been monitoring this particular group, the Border Guard Force in Kokang, for the better part of 2 years now, because what's happened there is quite astounding. And what they've basically done is created a highly robust casino infrastructure, physical casino infrastructure. I know many of us will be familiar with King's Romans and the GTSEZ in Bokeo, but not many people have seen the amazing infrastructure that's been developed up in Shan. So what's unique about the case of the Kokang BGF and their infrastructure is that the vast majority of the Kokang leadership is now effectively wanted by the Ministry of Public Security of China. And that's for a number of charges, including their association and engagement in cyberfraud, but also large-scale money laundering and underground banking. So we've been able to attribute several platforms that they ran over the better part of the last maybe 7 or 8 years, one of which is referred to as Werner International. So this company is implicated across several different Chinese court cases involving very major organized crime groups and industrial grade money laundering. In fact, the Ministry of Public Security referred to this particular actor as processing $3.6 billion a year as of 2021. So that's one actor in the special regions, and we're talking about an industry that's just skyrocketed across the region. So I'm going to put up a couple of videos here. They're very short, just to show you, sort of a real-life view of what's happening there. I don't know if these will run.
Maybe we can turn the light down if you're...
So this is, again, speaking to the convergence of this different type of criminality, the non-state armed groups. Also, an important component of development up in those special regions, which we can also see sort of taking place in different parts of the broader Mekong region. You see, hundreds, I've seen thousands of employees like this up in the special regions of Myanmar, basically going to work. And what they do when they get there is live deal cards on camera to, a global network of people who are gambling, but in fact processing, what seems to be billions of dollars across the table. As we can see in the backdrop there of the photo, there's also indication of a specific cryptocurrency, USDT, which is a stable coin which has been really prominent since the uptick and surge of this kind of regional cyber fraud phenomenon. One more video I'll play here. This is inside the casino cage, so inside the actual cage of one of these casinos, specifically attributed to Kokang Special Region 1. We can see just bulk cash everywhere. And what's unique is that on one of these bags of cash, we also see in Mandarin, Wa State Bank, which again sort of indicates some sort of a financial partnership between the Wa and the Kokang BGF, at least to some extent, in facilitating this cash movement. Again, this is concerning because some of these groups are involved very heavily in synthetic drug trafficking, among a lot of other criminality. What's unique is that despite the recent series of events in Kokang and elsewhere in Myanmar, this group continues to operate. This is also, again, despite the fact that they're wanted fugitives. They have subsidiaries set up across the region, including Cambodia, where they have land-based casinos, and monitoring their online presence of these different services that they offer basically leads you to a live stream where you can see the casino tables in various parts of the region, and also a social media-based Telegram platform in which they are actively making calls for different types of money laundering services. This infrastructure has also been misused and sort of spreading over into different crime types. So we've observed also some, through blockchain analysis, some indication of links of casino infrastructure misuse in the case of drugs and precursor trafficking. So this is a vendor, an online precursor chemical vendor who was very forthcoming with their crypto wallet address, and that was enabled us to, sort of observe some of the financial flows within their respective deposit address. This revealed several online casinos processing their funding, or their funds rather, that was obtained presumably through organized crime groups in the drug trafficking space, and again, sort of speaking to that broader convergence of this infrastructure. The last thing before moving on, and I'm sure we have a really exciting discussion to have, is sort of where this is heading. And I know Jeremy alluded to it a little bit, and Kun Suprani's threat assessment references as well. But we're seeing, one of the most concerning things is the growing indication of generative AI use, as well as deepfake fraud and other malicious technology being integrated into these operations. This is concerning for a number of reasons. It's going to accelerate things. It's going to make things more difficult to trace, to identify, scam compounds or other sort of criminal operations. And the important thing to understand in the case of deepfakes specifically is that it's not only in perpetrating cyber fraud or different types of cybercrime, but it can also play a role in the more traditional money laundering space by playing a role in circumventing these measures that I'm sure AMLO and other organizations across the region and globally are trying to implement, including KYC, customer due diligence, other sorts of things, to ultimately verify that a bank account or a cryptocurrency address, is being used by who set it up. So we can see, this is basically from a underground forum, let's say, and we can see a number of different services being offered, including this KYC bypass by way of deepfakes, but also the misrepresentation of identities of police officers, among many other things. I think that's basically all I wanted to cover. So I'm sure we have we have one more panelist. But thanks very
John.
much.
That was an excellent rundown. Leaves your head reeling. Fascinating that they post these things on TikTok. You just sort of pull it on TikTok.
You'd be amazed what you see, Gwen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't go in those rabbit holes. We put him in there, but it's amazing what's in Telegram.
Yeah.
And honestly, you can see live swaps of people money laundering live.
Right.
You can they'll take scam or casino cash and they do a swap from black, i.e., corrupted money or criminal money, into white. Amazingly often in regional currencies.
All there on
which then
TikTok
they can swap out into other
right.
currencies.
Yeah,
so
I think
it's live action like that, and they're still live. They're running.
Yeah. So some of these casino activities are live streamed, right? Yeah. I think we'll return after To's presentation. I think it might be useful also to look at and perhaps explain a bit more how separate are the online casino, the physical casinos, and what we all read about all the time here is the scam centres and these shocking stories of human slavery, trafficking, brutalisation. But actually, a lot of these employees in some of these, swank casinos, we can't forget that they're not all miserably trafficked and beaten up and starved. A lot of them are voluntary going and making a living out of it. So I think we can return to that sort of theme perhaps. But meanwhile, I think what would be useful at this point, and we're very grateful to have Tozo Lat with us, senior editor at Mizima, and I think we want to drill down into obviously one of the centres that we're talking about for the whole problem that this panel has laid out comes back to Myanmar, and also the intrigue and I guess fascination linked to the Operation 1027 and the amazing inroads that have been made by the resistance forces and the Chinese role. So I think you're going to try and shed some light on that. Over to you.
Thanks, and thank you very much, FCCT, Kwan, and our previous speaker. You guys already covered. I personally been to Pansan Wat Casino because I was a guest of Pao Yu-jin, and his brother Pao Yu-yi was our host to advise Wat TV. They have their own TV. They call it Watt TV, and they do a kind of cable TV service for the Watt. So I was there, and then they throw the party there. I know the scenes. So I'm the one been to the Tachilai, 9-story casino, and also the Mnyawari. So I'm, compared with, I also sometimes live in Melbourne, like a Crown Casino in Melbourne. So I know the sites. So exactly today is 80 days of the operation 10/20, October 27. Today and then there is a rapid change, and that's all linked to what our previous speakers are talking about, because until now we don't know whether China involved, and we know that they don't give green light and they don't give the red light. So this is the rapid development in what our Jeremy mentioned about Shan State, and these are the newly occupied and newly overtaken by the resistance forces, 28 townships. So there's 6 in Amandia, Kogan, and 7 in TNLA, Ta'an. And by the way, this morning AA took over one of the military outposts in Palawa, which border with Bangladesh and India. So there is a 29 today, because this morning they confirmed that they already put their flag.
So
three brotherhoods.
As that map is in Burmese, you might want to make it clear that on the right-hand side is
there
Thailand.
Is another map. Can I have another map?
Oh, the other
have
map?
a border.
I don't think it's with me.
I sent 2. Yeah, this one is more with,
If you can't see maps, there are, even if you're sitting on this floor, if you turn around, there might be a clearer view on these screens behind you.
Okay, so this is with the borderline, and all these little blue is recently took over by the resistance groups. So far, including AA, but AA is not on the map. This one is previous one. So 28 township, mainly on China border, and also one on Mekong. There are a few townships by the Karenni, IEC in Tram. Also, there is a lot of drug activities along the Shan Karenni border, and because these are all linked to the conflict in our own country. So far there are 577 armed groups. So as a journalist, we have a big map, and trying to remember all the names and what is happening. This is our new job. If you come to our newsroom, you will see all these 577 new groups and groups. So that this is the scale.
Well, is that including the established new groups?
Yeah.
I mean, established old groups, as well as new groups.
Yeah, as well as the previous one, but the PDF itself is 280 or so. So it's very complicated. I mean, there is always demand for money because of the scale of the conflict, because everybody need money to buy the bullets, and including Burmese army, because they bought 1 billion worth of, according to UN report, from Russia and China. They are using the Su-30, very expensive plane. So Russia are broke. They are asking money too. So both sides are accusing that, and I think the KNU recently made the statement, SAC may online involved in the scam because he benefit, because he really badly need money to pay for those, gun and arms ammunition. And also the SAC, they accuse the AA involved in the other, drug along the coastal line. But if you look at the your report, and there are a lot of activities. And recently there is a 5 million in Kanchanaburi. It's not traditional route. There is a newly amassed route in Thailand, right? So there is because these are all linked to the conflict. And also yesterday, Kokan announced their own administration, own rule, because Kokan and Laokai is under the martial law. So now they already abolished all the army existing rule, and they are introducing their rule. I'm not sure whether they have a policy on, how to handle it. I'm sure on the scam, they call it scandal because of the Chinese demand. And this is the reason the Chinese request Burmese army to send the previous BGF Kokan 10 people and wanted for scam, and they didn't hand over. And then there is the suddenly Kokan took over, and they arrest a lot of Chinese and Burmese and Kokan involved in whatever Chinese wanted list. So that's why it is very quickly within 80 days. Most of the township are overrun by the Kokan and Three Brother Alliance, and there is a Chinese sponsor 3 times ceasefire. I don't think it's working because only Kokan is not not actively engaged in fighting, but the TNLA, I mean, on that day, it was on 11, they agreed to cease hostility. Like the three brothers don't overtake their new territory, then in return, Burmese army will not share the bomb or with the planes. So there was the agreement, but it's breached next day, and this morning it already overrun. So I don't think it's going to last for very long. But those newly Amat established, semi-liberated area, I don't know whether do they have a policy on this, how to control drug or, but definitely on the scam because of the Chinese one. And also, again, a few days ago, General Mayoline talked with the Thai Commander-in-Chief. It is, 3 times within online. So they were talking about the crackdown in Myawaddy. Myawaddy is very complicated, so I ring one of our local sources in Myawaddy this morning. What is happening to the casino? There's a business as usual. What are you talking about? There are 100 casino Chinese there. They stay leasing because they worry that after they talk with the Thai and Burmese army, maybe there will be some immediate, but it's not happened yet. And this morning, I already spoke with one of the Myawaddy sources. But
you might want to say Myawaddy is
Myawaddy
just
is across the Mesau, next to the Thailand border. So it is business as usual. But what is shaky is a BGF. Most of the business, like in Kogan, because of the Chinese want the BGF. And also USDB MP. USDB is the army-backed party. And 2 of the Chinese wonder guys are elected USDB member in Kogan. So the same in Myawaddy on the Thai-Burma border. And it is the BGF running the show. So we don't know about, whether Chinese want those BGF, in their wanted list. So we are keeping our eyes on that. And also there is a lot of interest by both army, Thai and Chinese army, Thai and Burmese army about this addressing the Myawaddy particular case. So that is the official statement. So there is already 3 times in 3 months. It's quite a lot of ongoing engagement addressing these issues that what we are talking about, this illicit, economy. And also in terms of, there is a newly OCHA report, 2.6 million IDPs. And also there are 50 million recently IDPs in the northern Shan state alone. So I think there is no other means of living. So that is, I'm not surprised that they will be growing. They will go back to the quick cash crop opium. That is what you are talking about, especially in Shan state, and also then in some part of Karenni and Shan Karenni border is very active. You will see more about this activity. Maybe there will be more booming, because there is no way to other means of living. So that is also, that is also, unfortunately, it is another reality. So then the reason I'm showing this map is, we also keep an eye, like KNU make the statement that they accuse SAC involved in this, dirty business, and they will not tolerate drugs and also the scam. And also, but we don't know how they're going to handle this particular Myawaddy Shuikoku, and there are around 100 casinos and games center in Myawaddy, but they are all under the KNU, but run by the BGF. So we are also keeping an eye on this latest development. So a lot of fighting. This big red is the Thai-Burma border. It is the Myawaddy area. So these are all linked with our domestic conflict, and everybody now want money to buy guns, and also there is a both side forced recruitment, because army this Burmese army, Myanmar army, Tamaro never had like 6 brigadier general surrender and 3,000 soldiers surrender. It's never heard of before, and with their family 4,000. So I think that we're not sure is it the tipping point, but I'm sure Burmese army, Tamaro will be never the same like before. And currently, they have a recruitment issues. They have a very low morale. If you look at those guns, ammunitions that they surrender to Three Brother Alliance, you can use those weapons for another 2-3 months for sure. Not the small guns. It is a 120 howitzer, heavy weapon, anti-aircraft gun, everything that they surrender to the resistance. Their morale is very low. So the soldier, they don't want. They no longer want to engage in any kind of battle. At the same time, those ethnic groups like Wa, Kukan, Three Brothers, they never enjoy majority Burmese support. But now is majority Burmese are supporting because whoever beat the Burmese army, they were supporting. Doesn't matter who you are, as long as you can get rid of. So that is a very big moral issues. And those ethnic groups never enjoyed majority Burman support from the towns like Yangon, Mandalay. But now they are getting quite a lot of support. So I think Burma Myanmar were not going to stop in this current conflict. And so far, I think Tamaro, Burmese army lose 43% of territorial control. That is a recent survey by ISP. And we have a 330 township. 312 township has active conflict, and also likely to overtake by the resistant groups, and that there will be more territorial control. I was told that Songkran water festival, I can play water festival in Bago, not far from Myawaddy. So that is a promise. And so I think also all these, issues like newly emerged transitional authority, how are they going to address these illicit economy that what we are talking about? And also we have to change. In the past, it is only state center or the army center approach because these are the newly emerged, player in the who is literally controlling territories, and where those activities are active. Do they have the policy to address, or how are they going to respond about this particular, and drugs and scam and other transnational crimes. Like Myawaddy alone, very complicated. Myawaddy, Shikogo, how they run? It is the Chinese run with the BGF current and get the internet service from Thailand. And I'm sorry, they're using both, and the electric supply. That's one, it is a transnational crime center. Also, there is no rural law. Whoever with the guns, they rule and whoever pay the tax, basically, like that load of money, they will let it happen. Ironically, I will stop with this one. The Burma, Myanmar, in terms of migrant, in the past it is very poor. But now, if you look at real estate market, Burmese or Myanmar are the 10 most, 10 country buying condo in Thailand. I don't know where the money come from. Let's see.
I wonder.
Last year was number 8, and previous years were number 4. On top with Chinese and Russia, and Burma Myanmar are the most condo buyer in Thailand. I guess maybe because Singapore are very tough on them, a lot of money. So I guess there are a lot of money transition into Thailand. I'm very sure. But I have, as a journalist, but we don't have, that kind of sources in Thailand. But this is the fact that if you go to the real estate, and the most 10 country that buy in the real estate in Thailand, you will see Burma Myanmar list. Always top down. So there is a huge, money transition happening, and you are watching. I will stop with this one. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Tozalat. So you heard it here. Condo market is a hot investment in Thailand. Before we've got time for questions, but I would just like to perhaps turn to you, Jeremy, with one simple question, which is we've read so much about raids to close down scam centres and casinos, and as I said, I think there's not a clear definition of what's whether some scam centres are linked in with casinos. Are we talking about one and the same? Are they separate? But also, what is the state of play now with some of the biggest? We've just heard there are literally hundreds of them in even the area we're talking about in northeast Myanmar. But what's happened since 1027, and the Chinese have obviously sent in their people on some occasions. Also Cambodia, which we haven't spoken about much, but 2 years ago the big story was all the casinos in Sihanoukville in Cambodia.
Right.
So what's your assessment of where the whole casino industry stands and how the scam centre fits in to that?
Well, first of all, it hasn't really changed. It changed in the border areas in SR1, of course, fundamentally.
Speak up a bit.
Sorry, it changed in Special Region 1 fundamentally because of the takedown of the centers there. But, I think as John mentioned, the owners of that, Werner International, also own casinos in other locations, Sihanoukville prominently, in Cambodia. And with the online gaming and the forums that are online, they can essentially migrate those relatively efficiently. So while they lose the physical location, they don't necessarily lose the online location. Okay, and what some of the analysis we've done of the infrastructure, it's scattered around the world. So they've had website hosting in North America for some of these centers. Actually, they've had website hosting in Africa. They have website hosting in Hong Kong. So there's a lot, and they also have their different places they can base different elements of their business. So it hasn't fundamentally changed. At the same time, though, there's a displacement effect occurring potentially within the country. Prior to the panel, To and I were talking about Tachilek, and this is a place that I think needs a little bit more focus. It hasn't really gotten much relative to Myanmar.
Do you want to remind people where it is?
Right across from Misai, and right across from Chiang Rai province in the north of Thailand, in the heart of the Golden Triangle, essentially where Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand come together. But Tachilek, there's quite a lot of running casinos and also some scam centers, or alleged scam centers. And we also have the phenomenon of some of those sites well known for being drug storage sites, the exact same facilities. So we see this kind of convergence of the different businesses. I think we also have to remember that right adjacent to Tachilek is the Wa South, which is well known for having production facilities within it for drugs, but it also has, it's a place from which drugs from the north that transit all that territory that I described earlier end up being stored before they get shipped across the border into Thailand or into Bokeo and Laos. So there's a lot of activity in and around Tachilek. And then, of course, there's displacement down towards Myawaddy potentially, where some of the folks in the special regions were investors in the Myawaddy space already. With the BGF territories there. And then, of course, Cambodia, as John mentioned, and neighboring Laos. So you have a number of them that are doing business across the region. They're essentially kind of a regionalized conglomerate model at this point. So, again, really unchanged, but some kind of displacement occurring within. And that's the point. I think this business is amorphous and is able to be moved as long as the conditions on the ground that I touched on at the beginning are there, and they're there in many locations around the borders of this region.
So when you say that nothing much has changed, that means the money flows are the same, or even more?
Well, I think there'll be a blip on the radar because some people lost their money launderer of choice, or the businesses they were engaging with, and definitely the families that have they've lost their home in Kokang and they've lost infrastructure. But fundamentally, the business has marched on. It's continued to move, and it's very, very necessary for a lot of these other criminals that need to move money. It's serving a purpose. As I said at the beginning, I would describe it as a banking system. So while Suprani and the governments of the region really try their best to address illicit money flows in all the variety of ways she mentioned, it's really complex to deal with crypto because these things are moving outside state banking systems. Right? So you have these types of currencies, USDT, that John touched on, being used, which is convertible or is pegged to the dollar, so it's very attractive. But the thing is, it's used in a lot of these locations as a currency of choice, a crypto of choice, and then moving jurisdiction to jurisdiction relatively seamlessly. So it's a big, big challenge for governments to really get their heads around, grapple with. Thailand's well ahead of the neighbors, the three, but you can imagine what it's like on the other side of the border.
Well, yes, and it's quite extraordinary because all the news we read was about, 1,500 scammers being sent back to China, this compound being raided, that compound being closed, people being shot and killed in another. So you do get the impression that there's a decimation of
definitely, but the thing is, this is an operational reaction to the situation. So, law enforcement react and they follow the intelligence and information and chase the suspects, which they've done into those locations, and the criminal syndicates. But the business can move because of the nature of it online and the global reach of it. And also and there's other locations. And there are other service providers out there. John touched on a couple.
If I can just add to that, Gwen, as far as what we're seeing in the cyber fraud industry itself, I call it cyber fraud. I'm talking about pig butchering. I'm talking about all of these range of scams.
So cyber fraud relates to the online scamming.
Yes,
right.
Cyber fraud is
separate
as I
from
use
casinos and roulette wheels and whatever.
Sure. Could be a range of fraud, scams, so on and so forth. But with respect to the developments that we've seen across the region and sort of where things are heading, I think one thing that's important to note is also the rate at which these operations are professionalizing. So if you take away the lens of human trafficking, finding victims, which I think has been pretty aggressively targeted by governments across the region, you're left with a situation where organized crime who are engaged in these activities have to sort of react and innovate, and they've proven time and time again that they're very agile. We've seen this in the synthetic drug trade, and we're seeing it again. And so the way it looks like in this industry is that one of the things we're observing, for instance, is something referred to as a task scam. I don't know how many of you here, probably a bunch, have received random, cold text message talking about an opportunity to work remotely. That relates to a task scam. It's ultimately, you get a bunch of money held up and you lose those funds. I've also seen some really interesting data speaking to the prevalence of cyber fraud, pig butchering scams, and so on, task scams in developing countries, targeting kind of a lower threshold of victim rather than the wealthy engineer in Eastern or Western or North America or Europe. You see a lower level of targets who are losing $5, $10, $15, $20,000, but that happens to be their life savings. And then on top of that, we're also seeing increasing sophistication in the sense of malicious applications, specifically on Android phones, where malware is injected into an app that you've downloaded, and suddenly a number of self-executing transactions are executed on your mobile phone, wiping out your bank account. So this is something, again, it's not necessarily new, it's not exactly a scam, it's more traditional cybercrime, but we're starting to see these groups reinvest, professionalize their operations, and really sort of clean up their act in the sense that they're going to continue just in a bit of a different way, which again will create more of a distance between law enforcement authorities and organizations like UNODC and myself to be able to monitor, examine, and analyze and present stuff like this. So,
right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. We've got some questions, and please identify yourself and.
Sure. Thanks, Gwen, and thanks for this program. Very, very important stuff. I'm Larry Doors. I'm a club member. I'm an independent analyst based here in Bangkok. The last several years, I've monitored the media around pig butchering scams, scam centers, in particular focused on Myawaddy, Shui Koko, Massaut area. And I will note that CNN and New York Times both had big stories on pig butchering in the last month. It's really, really growing. And I'm a little bit worried as I perceive the way the story is being told. You look at the Thai situation, I'm afraid that Thailand, because the expectations are higher than they are in Myanmar or Laos or Cambodia, Thailand is a very difficult position. The telecoms that they're all using in Myawaddy, Shui Koko, all come from Thailand. The electricity all comes from Thailand. The tens of thousands of people who've been trafficked into slavery in those compounds have all come through Thailand. There are 3 roads that go into Massaut. Each of them has a military or BPP checkpoint there, and tens of thousands of people have made it past those checkpoints. The financial infrastructure, when you're laundering billions upon billions of dollars, probably it touches the Thai financial system. So, and as Tozal Lat said, it's actually kind of business as usual right now. Yes, the Thai army is having some conversations about, yeah, maybe we should do something about this. But I think the story is growing so fast that Thailand has about 5 minutes to get on the right side of this issue. And right now, as it's being described in the international media, Thailand is on the wrong side of this issue. So I would ask, number one, am I correct in my perception there that Thailand, is perhaps behind the curve here on understanding this is a very, very fast-moving issue, right? But nonetheless, are they behind? And if they are behind, are they going to be able to get out front of this issue? Because I think the year 2024 is going to be the year of news about scam centers and pig butchering. Thanks.
Right, thanks for that. So, Kun Suprani, do you know?
Well, Thank you, Gwen. Well,
I'm glad you're thanking me. I think you should thank Larry.
well, thank you very much for the very interesting questions and observations. And I'm not sure whether Thailand is on the wrong side right now, but we as a government try to address all the issues that you already mentioned, and we working on that issues very hard working on such issues, particularly for the online scams and anything that related to scam. We've been recently established the online anti-scam center, and we cooperate with all the relevant agencies that involving not only the banking sectors, not only the banker associations, but also all the telecommunication businesses. And I would say we didn't ignore all the challenges that we are facing, but we still working on that. And then hopefully the year 2024, you will see the big changes of Thailand positions in dealing with this kind of crime and transnational crime. Thank you.
Would anyone?
If I can,
yes,
if I can
John?
just add
Yes.
on, one example I'll just cite to speak to Kun Suprani's point. I think earlier in 2023, Thailand had implemented a new policy change to prevent money muling, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
at the time of our analysis about over the last 12 months, we were informed by multiple agencies across the region that you could purchase a bank account and a corresponding crypto wallet address and so on for about between 30 to 40 US dollars, so around 1,000 baht, right? From the monitoring that I do, I can tell you that the price of a bank account and a money mule account is skyrocketing, not just in Thailand, but across the region. It's more difficult to obtain. That's probably, as a result of some of these policy changes that are happening. But, as far as the broader sort of scope of the question, I think it's pretty clear that a lot of action is taking place. When Miyawadi might be wiped out, it's anyone's guess, but there's definitely policies that are making an impact.
Yeah, thank you, John. If I may add, in this issue, from my intelligence, you will see changing situations within Thailand. If you're talking about the money move, recently Thailand is not the main destinations for the criminal group to hire persons to open their account, because we recently we issued the emergency decree which imposed imprisonment, penalty and fine on those who open account for other people. I have been told from some intelligence source, which I cannot clearly mention where it's from, but it said the benefits of open the mule account in other countries, you will benefit more than you open the account in Thailand. For example, if you open the mule account in Thailand, you may receive only 1,000 or 2,000 baht. But if you open the account in other countries, you receive more than that, much more than that, maybe 5 times. And particularly for Myanmar, in terms of scam center, I heard that recently they may move to the other countries, not operate, not operation based in Myanmar. They more tends to move to the other countries, which easier to operate rather than in a situation that occur in Myanmar right now.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe we should ask our UNODC panelists what other countries would be comparable to where you could easily move a scam center.
Sure. But back to his point before I get to that, I think you're right. I think this year will feature a lot of coverage on this. I think that coverage is going to shift as a result of the conversations we're having like this tonight. And I think it's really important. Looking back 3 years, when we started receiving our first reports of people being trafficked into casinos and sort of scam centers, which frankly are often the same. There's a lot of, as I said earlier, the infrastructure overlaps and also the mechanisms for moving the money, and they mix the money. But also some of the casinos are outright scams. There's a lot of fake websites that people are logging into thinking they're gambling, and they're actually just losing money. So there's very much a strong correlation between the two and the same groups and so forth. But back to the point of this year, I think that we will start seeing pressure building, because simply the amounts of money being lost globally on this are growing. We've got prosecutors around the world prosecuting cases related to this region right now. So, there was some coverage today in the Financial Times about this, where, there's a US DOJ prosecutor in California who's got literally dozens of cases crossing her desk of Tether or other cryptocurrency-based scams, all coming back to this region. And again, it's come about incredibly fast. So, and it's because it's so complex as a crime type and as a concept to understand, it's really hard for governments to get ahead of. So that's why we've seen it mushroom and grow and metastasize. But to the point of where this can go, if I put my criminal hat on, you'll see this migrate further into those places that it's much, much more difficult to control. So it will stay in Myanmar, there is no doubt, because there's very, very attractive business conditions there. You have special regions and untouched territory, very close proximity to the Thai border. Yes, there's been a lot of attention on Myawaddy, and potentially there could be activities undertaken that will push and suppress that. But then it goes somewhere else. I would also be looking further afield from this region. Groups from this region have investments outside it. I would look to those parts of the world, and I won't name where, because there is actually active discussions on exactly this underway right now. But groups from this region are currently traveling to other parts of the world, scouting locations. And that's not a big hidden secret. And they're looking for those conditions: corruptible jurisdictions, weak rule of law, and essentially chaos. So, and there's no shortage of that in certain parts of the world at the moment. So these are good locations for this.
Would you rule
if
out
they're in
Latin
proximity,
America?
and even better if they're in proximity to major, potentially regional or potentially globalized banking hubs, i.e. not far from the Middle East, not far from here, and other parts of this region where you've got large regular cash flows to intermingle your funds with, which is incredibly important. You want to legitimize and get into fiat state-backed currencies, and you want to mix your money. And this region offers that possibility with the scams and casino monies. But you can do that in other jurisdictions as well.
Such as what, Latin America?
Such as other jurisdictions, not in this region, that are
That's very edifying.
they're slightly,
Thank you. Thanks for
unstable.
that.
But yeah, so we've been in some recent conversations about those jurisdictions, and it's interesting because governments from here are communicating with those other governments, sharing information on those suspects moving, and going on those scouting trips.
Right.
Very interesting.
Thank
But
you.
again, I think online infrastructure is slightly different. You can bounce that around as well, very effectively.
Well, can I just say, having just upgraded my phone, I went to both True and AIS the other day to set up some regional roaming, and was told that no server in Thailand now offers or enables roaming in Myanmar. It's all off the... So that's interesting that both True and AIS have cut... you can get roaming packages for every country in the world. Well, I'm not sure about North Korea, but definitely they have taken Myanmar off, which is quite striking, because they hadn't earlier last year. And I think another interesting thing is business people I've been interviewing who are Western business people invested in Myanmar with bank accounts in Singapore have been trying to, reading the writing on the wall, which is not rocket science, after UOB, the Singaporean bank, has started cracking down on Myanmar accounts. Other Singaporean banks, the two main ones, are still operating, but these people I interviewed were trying to move money and approached Bangkok Bank to open accounts, and Bangkok Bank has refused to open accounts for them if they're coming from Myanmar, and that the proceeds are clearly from Myanmar, even though these are Western companies, well audited, international standards, etc. So I think it is becoming harder and harder. I think we've got time for maybe one more question, if someone has one. Do I see my colleague up there? Francesca, would you like to introduce yourself and ask?
Hello, I'm Francesca Regalado with Nikkei Asia. I wanted to ask about the methamphetamine boom.
About what? Sorry, we can't hear you.
The boom in methamphetamine supply. How much is it now contributing to the revenues of these crime organizations? And we know the street price here in Bangkok has gotten significantly cheaper over the past couple of years. how is that affecting what the producers are getting like, at the factory gate in wholesale and the couriers who take it across the border?
I guess I can take that, and maybe you have something to add, because you might have some good insights from North Shan. But yeah, the price has collapsed, but it's a different business than it used to be. You know, there used to be an attempt to keep the price in Bangkok stable for methamphetamine, like Yaba tablet or Ya ice, as they call crystal. In Bangkok was at a set point, and it kind of didn't fluctuate too much. And then it started collapsing about even pre-coup, right? So there was this surge of methamphetamine that it became a volume business, and therefore you made your money through volume sales and generated more money through growing the market. And Asia has a big market to grow into, right, to potentially just expand. So right now I think Bangkok, I'm not sure, is it 60 baht or something, and in the north it's 20 or so, and in Shan State it's half of that again. So it's really, really decreased along the chain. But what you see instead is massive shipments of the drug making their way. So you touched on the Kanchanaburi shipment. So I was there, 50. Yeah, 50, million. And okay, that kind of got some attention in the media, but it didn't get a lot. But 50 million. Back in 2005, the region didn't seize 50 million. And that was one truck. And it had 50 million on it, made by groups from North Shan that routed it down through Mon territory and through DKBA territory into this country in Kanchanaburi, 2.5 hours from here. So what they've done is just essentially change from making money off 500,000 tablets to making it off 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20, and it never seems to end. And they can crank out the volumes. So it means that because the price point has collapsed, the incentive is there to push out more, which they're doing. And I think the other thing we're now seeing is the re-emergence of the major trafficking routes. So after the takedown of one of the big syndicates I referred to at the beginning, there was a big change in trafficking in the region. It started getting bunched up in the Mekong. And because they couldn't connect to Sydney, Tokyo, Seoul, and some of the other urban centers the same way, that because the connection between the major traffickers and Shan State was broken to some extent, but now we see the reconnection, and we're going to see over the course of the next year what we've started to see, which is major shipments making the way further afield of that crystal methamphetamine, I would suspect. And as To just very rightfully said, we'll see more opium and heroin, because there's no other economic opportunity in that country, because the economy's collapsed. And the poor need employment, and opium's an employer, so that means more heroin. And that we'll start seeing Golden Triangle heroin highly likely making its way to markets that it hasn't been in for 15, 20 years.
Right. Well, I think that also, though, leads to our original topic, which is the scam centres and online casinos. I mean, they weren't there like 10 years ago when heroin and then later when meth rose first. So actually, when you talk about figures like one company turning over $3.6 billion in a year, and you're saying there's hundreds of casinos along the border, we're talking about a lot of money that might mainly go to criminal gangs and BGFs, but obviously there is a big factor there of local employment, money being made by all kinds of suppliers to whatever. So in fact, would that be a bit of an offset, and has this scam industry, including physical casinos and the scam industry generally, filled a gap in a way in both northeast Myanmar and along the border? A lot of revenue we're talking about there.
A lot of revenue, and that's the 3.6 billion people know about.
Right. Well, that's one company you were saying,
yeah,
right?
one
That's
company and the revenues.
So what's your estimate of total money we're talking about?
There's different ways to estimate, but we had an estimate for Cambodia, which came out of different sources, which was, what was it, John? 6 to 12 billion, right? So
in a year.
Yeah, that was figures which came out of a variety of meetings with different authorities.
And what's your estimate in Myanmar?
Well, just to put it in perspective, we talked about junkets. Suprani and John talked about junkets, and the Chinese have been quite successful over the last 3-4 years taking down different gambling architecture. And there's one gentleman who's in prison now in Macau, and if you can read Chinese court documents like my staff can, or the indictments and the various pieces of the case. So he's convicted for, I think it was over the course of 6 or 8 years, it was $100 billion was put through his junket mechanisms illegally. So $100 billion. So, but that's that Alvin Chow, right? So that scale is really significant. And he was an investor in some of those same locations in Cambodia, that gentleman, with some very big players in that country, and also doing business with others in the special region. So these types of big money flows are not unthought of, and it's just that we have our hard time getting our heads around them. But they're very big illicit money flows in and of themselves, generated by these businesses, and then facilitating money movement for those other businesses we've talked about.
Right.
Yeah, the
Well,
drugs
thanks.
and so on and so forth.
Right. So there's every incentive for them to hang in or morph and keep
Yes.
going, right?
Yes.
Okay. So final question, what do we do about it all? We've heard from Kun Suprani what Thailand's trying to do about it all, but what generally? Oh, To, do you have a solution?
Also, there is a growing demand from Bangladesh about the methamphetamine, and also those,
Can you
the
speak
coastal
into the
line,
microphone, yeah.
coastal line, the ice and other go all the way to Middle East and other. But there is a growing demand from the Bangladesh, and it is a huge demand. And also about the number, Chinese came out with a scam. They lost 1 year like $14 billion, which is a little over 1 billion a month. I mean, they don't steal money from Chinese, that's why they're really, really angry. So that is the amount that we know. And
So
Myanmar,
what to
Burma,
do about
economies, it is around, our GDP is only 70 billions. But now, according to World Bank, it's going to be a bit drop. So I think almost amount the same with this illicit, economy. They had to head with our GDP, I guess.
So what can be done? What will be or should be done about it?
I will say something at the high level, and maybe I think Suprani can talk about government-specific policies and actions they might take. But I think fundamentally we have to have a bigger conversation in the region. This is not a policing issue that we're describing. I'm not just seeing it that way. So we're describing this big underground banking system which has been established, which is facilitating money movements and all this. This is a political problem for this region and the world, because this system is there facilitating, generating monies in and of its own right, and facilitating money movement for large criminal syndicates as a service provider. So the region needs to talk about this at the highest of political levels, because if you isolate this to a policing response, you're reacting to this. You're reacting to intelligence you pick up and cases you pick up, and you go and make arrests, but that doesn't undermine the criminal landscape. So we have to have a conversation, ASEAN, and we can debate, is that going to be effective? But it has to happen nonetheless, and it has to move outside that group as well. So there have been some initial conversations in that area, including by ourselves with China or the ASEAN group, but that has to mature very quickly, because the point made by the other questioner is right. This is going to grow, and 2024 will become a bigger issue if it's not dealt with. So I think we need to get our heads as the international community and that care about this, of how do we ramp this up, push it up a notch beyond simply trying to arrest our way out of it, because it's not going to work. And I think it'll end up like the drugs business. It continues to kind of mushroom, because you can't seize your way out of it. It's just there. So you have to switch your logic and deal with the market, deal with the policy frameworks and the failure of governance that we're discussing, sort of.
Right. So you think
The small things to steal
should
those
put
little
in
bits.
more money to this?
Sorry?
Do you think government should put in more money to this?
Well, of course, but I think smart money, I don't think you have to put in a ton, but you have to put in smart money, and I think you have to engage on this. The political, like it or not, there's difficult conversations to have with governments or authorities de facto and legitimate that we may not like all the time. We have to have those conversations and keep them going. We also have to have conversations with the opposition, because they have to also embrace the solution that we're describing.
Opposition meaning?
NUG, I mean the
Thank
government
you,
in
yes.
exile.
Myanmar's
So we have to have, because we do,
parallel
I mean the
government.
UN talks to them. So, but the thing is, this is one of many things they have to deal with. And as To rightly said, people need money to buy bullets and fight a war.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to add anything else?
No, I couldn't agree more with Jeremy. I think like, it's very important that we really need like political commitment, but not only like one country, because we cannot solve this problem alone. So international cooperation is needed, and then we need to take these actions seriously. So anyway, like the political commitment is like, needed.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, a final question then. Okay, last question. Please identify yourself.
Larry Jagan, freelance journalist and Burma specialist. I have two questions. First of all, I've pondered as to why Myanmar took so long to try and do something about the scam, the scammers and the criminal elements. We know for a fact that China has been pushing the SAC since April this year to do something. They handed over a list of 43 people that they wanted arrested for involvement in criminal activities. One of them, of course, was So Tut, then the Interior Minister. Why do you think it took so long for the SAC to acknowledge that there was a problem? Is it because they were intricately involved in receiving money from these scammers and criminal activities? And secondly, it's been a very illuminating presentation about just how extensive this all is. Why was it that, what is it about China? Why were they so concerned? What impact is it having on the Chinese economy that made them so aggressive in trying to deal with the criminal elements in Shan State and are about to do the same in Myanmar?
Right. I think a few of you could answer those things. Well, Toad, do you want to talk about there's been a lot of reporting in Myanmar media very close up about this question of why it took so long. And I think Irrawaddy reported recently, even gave a figure that the junta in whatever way was earning $14 billion a year out of this. So it was not in their interest to act on China's concerns.
Oh, I mean, we also wondering why it took so long. I mean, they know, Army knows everything. I mean, this is a BGF, right? And also, Myanmar recently awarded them honorary awards to those, one people, two, and there are two USDP MPs too. So they know who are they. I mean, but why it takes so long? Then Chinese were very angry. Then suddenly, now there's 80 days of the 1027 operation. Suddenly there is the territory lost along the China border. I mean, who is the winner? I think the Chinese is the winner at the moment because I mean, most of the territory now controlled by those northern alliance, and they are because everybody knows that Kokan Wat, they don't like them to accuse as a proxy of Chinese, but they cannot lose face with Chinese. So I think they see as an opportunity to seize these because of the army.
But why do you think it took them so long?
Definitely, I mean somehow they must be benefit out of this. Very very simple. It is about the interest and benefit, and we don't know how these are linked with all their top kinds and army commanders and because of the army know everything along the border. Chinese know too. Chinese also they send their intelligence, and they were the 200 people killed, and some of the Chinese intelligence. That's also make Chinese very angry. So that is definitely you have to look the beneficiary. Who are the beneficiary out of this? There is a lot of accused. The Burmese also need some cash. I'm sure. I mean, the Burmese army need cash. A lot of sanction, a lot of problem. They need money, and also they need to pay money to the Russian too. I already spoke about Su-30, quite expensive military equipment. They shell in every day. Once one aeroplane take off, $20,000. If you shoot, it is another 10,000. Depending what kind of rocket you shoot in. So they need a lot of money too. So that is also very obvious reason that there is a limit. And recently there is a Chinese foreign ministry, deputy foreign ministry in Naypyidaw. They were asking three things. One is about this, returning this scammer. They are wanted list, and there is two other. But Myanmar didn't fulfill. And after the meeting, you look at Myanmar face, not very happy. So there is something something really, why the question is definitely it is all about the beneficiary. That someone is benefit out of this scammer. 40 billion a year is a lot of money too.
Right.
And also, again, now, because of the Northern Shan scammer, now they moved to Southern Shan now. There is a report recently we are seeing that they moved to the Tachile. So that these crime syndicates, they have a huge network.
Right.
Also, again, to the Myanmar and the Chinese also request them both. BGF, all the BGF running this business. Nowadays, we all know what to do. There's a BGF, who is a Shweko and we all know it, right? And Chinese also, they knew it. But definitely someone is benefiting out of this, So
Right.
we have to look into that. Who is the beneficiary out of this illicit business?
Right. Thanks, Jeremy and.
I could
John,
add
if
that
you-
just it's hard to, we don't have a trail of financial transactions, but I think the logic of who benefits is and making decisions probably in most businesses, if you look at who's benefiting or who needs the space to operate, that's where you should be looking, right? And so the relationship between maybe it all in the BGF is well established and the revenues generated were fairly well understood. So I would imagine there must have been some kind of quid pro quo. That aside, to come to the other question, which was on the concerns of China, why was China so decisive? What was the concern? They shared lists prior to April last year.
Shared
Lists. I mean, they've shared information for quite some time.
You mean with the SAC?
Well, with the police, and I think they started. And I think what we've witnessed is yes, an operational response, which has been hitting things very hard in the north. But I think also that they have done what I have already described the region in a sense needs to do. This has become a massive political priority inside China. So they have a whole of government approach inside the government on this issue. It's not simply the Ministry of Public Security, which is deeply involved, of course, but they also have other elements of the government of China addressing this together collectively. And politically, it's hit high level because the capital outflows that have been associated with this are huge. I mean, there's been billions and billions of dollars siphoned out of the Chinese state or out of the country through these online gaming systems and scams. And the primary target of those businesses has been China itself. So they have that interest as well. And of course, it's enriched major transnational criminal groups, which they feel a threat from because of the other things that they do. So, and that has become a major story inside China, which this room doesn't really read into because of the language barrier. Right. But inside Chinese social media and WeChat, this is huge. Towns, whole families are defrauded. They lost everything. So the investment frauds were targeting China first and foremost. The casinos were targeting China first and foremost. Yes, there was other countries, other language groups after China, but still it's primarily China that they're targeting. So they have been huge victims in this, and that when it reaches the level of, I imagine state councillors and the center of power, then they take action, and we're seeing it now. So I don't think we're going to see the end of it either, because they're building pressure on governments in this region to do yet more. So that again might mushroom it. Let's see, but that's the kind of thing, what we're witnessing is their political prioritization of this.
Thanks very much. That's a great answer. And on that, I would really like to thank our speakers tonight. I thought that was really excellent. So thank you very much. And I'd also really like to thank Jeremy Douglas, who I think this is your final appearance at the FCCT, Jeremy, for now.
Yeah, everyone can be
after
happy.
A decade here in your role. Jeremy's leaving us and heading to a new, I won't say better, but probably more senior position in
like
abroad in Europe. And so thank you for all the support, for the interest and engagement with the FCCT.
Sure.
And thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Thanks, man.